We're at New York Comic Con. I'm talking to Ram V. So much to talk about. Congratulations on a phenomenal Detective Comics run. Right off the heels of that, you are now going into the fourth world with your New God series, which we've talked a little bit about off camera, but I can tell you, awesome stuff with Evan Cagle.
Yep, that's right.
So exciting. Can you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about what your plan is in the wake of the All In initiative?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me, and also congratulations to you on your debut comic book work. So
that's very kind. Thank you so much.
So yeah, for my New Gods pitch, actually there are two pitches in one. The first of my pitches was, what if all of these fourth world Kirby characters had a story where they got unified and collided into the mainstream DCU? So we're going to see that happen. And then the second pitch was, what if the newest of the New Gods had to be raised by 7 of the DCU's greatest immortals? And so we're going to see that culminate as well. Obviously, the story is kind of bigger, broader than that, but I feel like those are the two sort of linchpin moments in the story.
Now, with the wake of what happened in DC All In Special 1, with the demise / resurrection of Darkseid, now he's leaving a huge hole in the fourth world and with Apocalypse in general. I assume that's going to have a major impact into what your whole plan was.
Yeah, both emotional and plot impact. We always think of Darkseid as this kind of big bad in the DCU. Of course, he's been so many times the greatest villain. But what if his presence was also keeping away other worse things from coming to this corner of the cosmos? And so we start seeing this alien race called the Niktari. They're walking in, and they don't see themselves as gods or conquerors. They see themselves as the scavengers of the cosmos. So their claim is, now that Darkseid is gone, this system is in decay because it's out of balance, and their job is to come clean up the mess. And so I just love the idea of pitting someone or a force that is fanatical about their purpose but doesn't believe in godlike or godliness, set against new gods who believe themselves to be the gods of these various aspects. So I think that's going to be very cool. There's also things we're doing in terms of, I feel like Kirby's work was great, but it never really differentiated the gods in terms of like what they do, what are their powers. And so I feel like we're getting an opportunity to do that here, so that's going to be very exciting. What if the New Gods were only ever operating at about 25% of their power? And so we'll see the manifestations and ramifications of that as well. And then all of that, of course, ties into the emotional side of things. So we're going to see Highfather questioning his purpose. If Darkseid is gone, what is my purpose? Why am I needed? And then we'll see that come to a culmination where he has to decide who to pass the torch on to. And then that becomes a question of, okay, which of my sons inherits this great responsibility and power? And we'll see that play out. And then obviously, to a lesser extent, the whole lack of balance between Darkseid and Highfather will play out in the relationship between Orion and Mr. Miracle.
Right.
Mr. Miracle and Barda have had a child of their own called Live Free. And so Scott's got to choose between being a dad and being a god. And how does that pan out? And then Orion, of course, was supposed to be the one who toppled his father. And now that his father is gone, Orion's a loose cannon, and we'll see what that culminates in.
It's really exciting, especially with a little bit of a glimpse of the Evan Cagle art. How involved has Evan been in the process from formation to execution? And also, when does the book actually officially drop?
The book drops on December 18th. So issue 1 comes out December 18th, and then monthly cadence from there on. And I know there's been questions about, is it a 12-issue thing or is it an ongoing? It's very much an ongoing. We've got a roadmap for about 3 years worth of story. We'll see how far we get, but that means people have to pre-order. In this particular case, I think Evan's involvement was always in my head, having worked with him on Dawn Runner, just because he transmits scope and scale so well. It's not easy to find an artist who can encapsulate what it might feel like to see a universe explode, right, but on like 2 pages of a comic book, you know? And so I feel like Evan's super talented in being able to do that. But also, Evan's got a really keen sense of design. And I think part of sort of my complaint with all of the New God stuff that came after Jack Kirby was it was trying so hard to be Jack Kirby, that I think it kind of misses the point of working in comics, where the whole idea is that you take something someone else did and then you make it your own. And I feel like Evan's design sensibilities are so great that these characters are going to feel like they're relevant in the here and now.
How is this series going to kind of like focus on and kind of highlight some of these, I'd hesitate to say lesser known, but like the rest of the New Genesis family?
Sure. Well, firstly, this series is going to be very new reader friendly. I don't think you need to do homework before you jump into this book. If you're familiar with the general construct of who Darkseid is and maybe who Orion is and Mr. Miracle and these characters are, I think that core group of characters is our window into this world, so it wouldn't be a case of you being unfamiliar with anything when you start off. And then I feel like the reason I enjoyed Kirby's work was I was not familiar with anything before reading his Fourth World, obviously because it was the first iteration. But there's this sense of discovery. Of every time you turn the page, there's a sense of like, I've never seen this before. Isn't that wonderful? And I think we're trying to have the same sense of discovery here, where we're not obsessed with needing to know the lore. We're interested in creating new lore for people to jump into, people to catch on to. And then beyond everything, in terms of like, oh, I don't know any of these characters, why would I be invested? The whole point is you're invested in the characters because of their struggles and what they're going through, not because you already know who they are or not. So all I can do is promise a great story when you jump in, and I feel like that has been the kind of work that I've always enjoyed, where I didn't know anything, I picked something up, and I was just engaged from the get-go. So yeah, hopefully that brings in and keeps a lot of readers on the book. And then we are very much focusing on some of the lesser known characters. I wouldn't necessarily say maybe Light Ray is lesser known, but certainly less so than Orion or Mr. Miracle.
Less focused on, certainly.
So Light Ray's got a huge role in the story. High Father's got a huge role in the story. We've got completely new gods. Because it felt right that the new gods of New Genesis also represent ideas and gods from other cultures and other places, because largely Kirby was borrowing from Greco-Roman myth, whereas there is the Hindu pantheon. There are Asian gods from Chinese culture, from Indo-Persian culture. So a lot of these gods will also find their sort of manifestations within the story. And then some of them are just plain silly. We've got a god of doorways in there. We've got a god of speaking to mother boxes, who we named the Mother Speaker. So we're not afraid of being kind of whimsical and silly, just like Kirby was in a lot of ways. So I think there's a lot of new stuff here for first-time readers to glom onto.
How connected would you say you've been, and it is, to what's going on with Absolute and the All In stuff?
I mean, quite literally over the sort of span of this convention, Scott Snyder and I have been chatting about, so how does this culminate and what happens at the end of it? And it's an interesting thing, right? Like, I always get asked, whether it's hard to deal with things connecting and crossovers and whatnot. And I always push back on that. I always say, like, no, the joy of comics is that everything is happening all at once, and then you get these unexpected bleed-ins and bleed-outs from books into each other. And so I've always enjoyed that part of comics. the New Gods originally started off as a pitch that was just meant to be, hey, I want to bring this corner back into the DCU. And I remember this as a moment because there were writer talks going on about how everything would tie in. And I think it was Jim Lee at one point who went like, what if we did this with the New Gods book? Everything would tie in, and I think all of the writers at that point just went like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. And so I think the New Gods went from being one more book in the initiative to now kind of sitting at that sort of pivotal spinal point for the whole narrative. They're also the only group of characters that are poised to where potentially they have access to both the Absolute Universe and the All-In side of things. They may not know it yet, but but we'll see how that sort of pans out. And then of course there's this question of if Darkseid always is, what happens to a universe that doesn't have him there? And so I think that also connects both the Absolute side of things with.
Well, thank you so much for sitting and talking with us today, man, and hopefully you get a chance to enjoy the con.
Yeah, I think my aim is to walk around for a little bit and then go sit at a bar across the convention and, talk shop with other creators.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot for watching.